Hello, everyone. Welcome back to part 3 of how to make a FNaF Fangame in Clickteam Fusion. Last time we left off, we finished up stuff in the menu, and we were just setting up stuff for the next part, which is essentially just going to be night transition stuff and night setup. So it's really just gonna be on that stuff this episode. So the first thing that we gotta do before we even mess with this frame that we made in the last episode is we need to make our actual like night value, make our actual night setup. So to do that, we gotta go over to our application settings and go over to our values, because if you remember, this is where global values and global strings are located if you watch the first episode. We are going to make a global value, and this is going to be our night, so we're going to make a new one, and we are going to call this night. So, what's important to, of course, understand, I personally like having the nights as global values because usually you want these to carry over to every single frame, which, the night data usually tends to want to do. And of course, since we don't want to have a night 0, unless you do want to have a night 0, I mean, who's to say for me to tell you guys what to do, but normally we just want to have our first night be night 1. So our default value for the night's going to be 1. And pretty much this is going to be about it for the setup, just making sure that we have this because it is going to be important for when we do start meddling with our night transition screen. And then one other thing as well, we're actually going to go into this frame now, so we're going to double click. And before we do anything with the visuals or the loading or anything like that, we're going to make a new object in here. And this is going to be essentially our save data, pretty much. So we're going to be using an object, what's called the ini++ version 1.5 object. If you've installed Fusion or, just recently using Fusion, you're not going to have this object in your list right away. You are going to have this object, just called ini, in your list. However, we want to actually avoid using this one, and that's primarily for one simple reason. So right here is the save file for the original Five Nights at Freddy's. And as you can see, the entire thing is stored in plain text, which means that if you know where to find it and if you know what data to change, anyone can go in here and just change whatever they want. So we can set the level, which is the night, to 5, beat 7, which is 420 to 1, beat game equals 1. I don't know, I think star 1, star 2 are both values. But you see what I mean? You can just go in here, add whatever you want, change whatever you want. This is because the normal ini object that is automatically in Clickteam has no decryption. The ini++ object has decryption. And normally you want to have decryption so that way people can't just go into this file and change whatever they want. So how do we actually get this? Because like I said, it's not going to be automatically installed the first time. Well, if we go to the right here and click on this button called Manager, we have a bunch of objects that you can install. I don't know how large this list is with just standard 2.5, because obviously I have the 2.5 plus DLC and developer, which adds some. However, what we're going to do in this top bar here, this is going to be our search bar. We type in ini++, you can see that, well, actually there's 2. Don't ask why I have 2 of these. That's actually for a very specific reason. But in any case, you're going to have one that will give you an option to install it. Obviously, for me, it says reinstall because I already have it in here, but you click reinstall. It'll give you this pop-up that says, do you want to allow this app? Press yes. And boom. And then pressing refresh just refreshes the extension manager. But if you close out of this, it refreshes the create a new object screen, and now you should have the any++ object in your directory. So we're going to click on that and place. So now we have our save file object, but of course, you know, it's not just enough to have an object for it. We need to actually be setting stuff up for it. So when you go into the properties of this object, there are a few different settings that you want to, you know, toggle pretty much. The first one should always be your default file. Basically what this is depending on where you're going to locate, well, it doesn't really matter, but you know, we'll figure out where we're going to locate this file in a minute. You're going to be naming your specific file. What I like to do, we're gonna just call this, I don't know, FNaF tutorial. So we'll just name it that. I'll probably name it something else like more stupid in a minute, but basically we're gonna name this, and the reason why I'm specifically showing this is a lot of people don't actually know about this, because a lot of people, what they like to do is they have the urge to go into the event editor and set up a bunch of stuff with the any++ object that way, when normally you can just set up the default file in the settings and there's really no reason to have to do that. Now, if we go a bit further down, we'll see this option called base folder. You can have this to whatever you want. Usually, I like to have this in application data around like where the user stuff is. But again, it really doesn't matter too much. It's just where you want to keep it. And initial data. The thing about initial data, this can be useful if you have like a lot of stuff that you need to have loaded into your save file immediately, which I don't think we'll need to do. But the thing about this is that, well, you guys will see. There's something else about the any++ objects that kind of makes this a bit arbitrary. All of these are, you know, all the same. And then we finally get to compression and encryption, which is pretty much just how we're going to make our save files decrypted. So I always have these two settings toggled on whenever I have an any++ object active. And then for encryption, we can actually type something in. This is the key that will be used for actually decrypting your save file. And what helps is, you know, if someone is trying to, or decrypt it, sorry, encrypt it. My bad, I was using the wrong word there. So basically, if someone is trying to decrypt it, the info will be decrypted and loaded. Yeah. So basically, if someone is trying to decrypt your save file, they need to have a very specific phrase or key to actually decrypt it and, you know, view the data. So this could be whatever you want. Again, like I said, it doesn't have to be what I'm going to type in. I'm just going to type in like that. I don't know. Like I said, I'll come up with better names for all this crap in a minute. Basically, yeah. And as far as initial settings go, that's about it. You don't really need to toggle with or mess with any of these. You don't want to, like, yeah. And then read only is in read-only mode. Yeah, like the rest of this is kind of redundant. Global data is just, I guess, if you have this property per frame. If you have like more than one any++ object for some reason, I guess you can have global data for stuff. I've never used it though, so I would rather not worry about that. Now then, what we're going to do before we do anything else, again, I know I keep saying that, but I promise the setup is important. We're going to go over to our global event editor. If you don't remember, this is essentially going to be right next to our storyboard editor. It's going to be global event editor. You can toggle it in list mode by clicking on this doohickey right here in case you aren't a psychopath like me and like editing in the normal event editor. So what we're going to do in the global event editor, if you guys remember, this is basically just code that applies to every frame. So if there's something that you need to have in every single frame and you don't feel like copying and pasting it in every single frame like a normal human, just use the global event editor. So we're going to make a start of frame condition. And so far, the only thing we're going to need to do, well, actually, you'll notice how we don't have any objects, obviously, because we just kind of have our default settings. But if we go over to import over here, whoa, it's all of our objects that we've made so far in our application. We're going to select the ini++ object. And now we're actually going to be setting up some code for that object specifically. And what we're going to do is we're going to click on set current group. And we're going to set this to, I'm going to set it to everything. And then usually you just want to leave that at 0. So what this does, how ini files work in Clickteam, is what it does specifically, it uses groups to kind of organize all the save data. The thing about this though is you kind of have to make sure that everything is in a group in order for things to work. So how I get around this is I just have one group for everything. And what this does is setting this up at the beginning of the frame for every single frame, having like a selected group for the file. What I can do is anytime that I need to be setting up data, there is a specific function that specifically automatically sets up data in the group that is set as the current group. So this is why this setup is important. So that way we don't have to worry about, okay, which group do we need to use? How am I going to set this up before everything else? Yada yada. We can just do this like immediately in the global event editor. And also one more thing too, since this is actually in a whole other different event editor, we're going to go over to back to our application properties, go over to events, and we're actually going to mess around with this setting right here called event order. Because here's the thing. The events in specific frames and the events in global events are technically their two separate things, and Clickteam checks for one before the other. So because we want our the code that we just set up in the global event editor to be first, we're gonna select this and select global events, frame events, and then behaviors is something that we'll talk about when we get to it. And then account objects that don't exist, we don't need to worry about that. Okay. Alright, that should be all the setup for our actual night stuff. Now we can actually start setting up our night transition. So we're going to go ahead and make a new string object now. So we're going to apply it here. I'll just set up the width and the height here. Hold on, forgot. That works, I think, actually. Like 1,200. We're going to center this, align in frame, align in frame. And we're going to call this our, let's call it text, because that's going to be the only string in here. Change the font again. Again, all of this stuff should be like essentially just a recap from the last few episodes. And alignment, I don't know if I've shown you guys alignment yet. So basically you can select where the text comes from. So right now it's coming from the left and the top of our radius for the string. But because we kind of want it to be centered, we'll have it be centered like this, to where it's coming from the center of the radius and not from the left, right, or top or bottom. And then we're going to make a set of paragraphs here. So what we're going to do, actually, let me show you guys another cool thing too. if you go to these three dots in the paragraphs here, when you're setting up text for the string, you'll be able to access a larger screen that can allow you to essentially make new lines. It's pretty much the one thing that this is mostly useful for. But in any case, we're going to set up all of our strings to pretty much just be our, night transition text. So we're just gonna do this. Actually, I think the way that it was done originally was it was more formal. It says first night, second night, so whatever. So we're just gonna do this until we get these all filled in. Really? Okay. Sixth night, and then seventh night. And of course, if there are more nights in your game than just 7, or if there's less nights in your game than just 7, you don't have to do exactly as I do. Do whatever your game is gonna have. So now we're gonna go over to our event list editor, make a start of frame condition, and what we're going to do is we're going to go to the text that we just set up, click on the set paragraph option. Again, this should be kind of recap from the second video where we kind of went over the rest of the UI and stuff. And instead of just selecting a paragraph from the selection, we're going to go to use a calculation, because this is going to be dependent on what our night global value that we set up some time ago is going to be. And we're literally just going to type in the name of our global value. And you'll notice how as soon as I finish it up, the text changes a different color, and now it says valid expression, so it's valid. And we're going to press OK. So let's say, for example, that we went into this frame and we were on the third night. Well, since our night value is now 3, if we run the frame, you can see that now it says that we are on the third night. And it'll do that for whatever night that we're on. So that's fully set up now. And of course, we need to make it so that way it fades in and then loads into the office after about a couple of seconds. So what we're going to do now, event list editor, thank you. We're going to make another new condition. We're going to go to the timer up here, which is going to be that fourth option. And we're going to click on, is the timer equal to a certain value? And for this, we'll probably just do 2 seconds. So you can set it in hours, minutes, seconds, or any hundredth of seconds. So obviously, we don't need to worry about those right now. So as soon as timer equals 2 minutes, or 2 seconds, sorry, we're going to add a new action. And what we're going to do is we are actually going to toggle a flag. I'll name this in a second. Actually, oh, you know what? I just realized I never actually toggled that selection. Let me think here. Huh? So now that I think about it, we don't even have... Okay, I'll just go ahead and do that right now then, because I don't feel like making a whole new object just for an alterable value. So, if you guys didn't know, if you didn't catch it anyways, when I was messing with the event stuff here, there is also an option for making alterable values and strings for and flags for strings and counters, which we'll want to go ahead and click that on. Because now if we go over to our values section of our string, now we can set up alterable values, strings, and flags. So usually I actually do this first among some of the stuff that I do, but I guess I didn't think I was really going to need it right now, but I did. So, okay, now we're going to make a new flag here specifically, and this is going to be called fade. Because what we want to do is we want to have this fade away as soon as the 2-second mark has been reached. So we're going to go back to our editor, make a new action for our string, and we're going to set our fade flag that we just created to on. And now, for our third line, we're going to check if the fade flag is on. And we're going to make a new action, which sets the alpha blending coefficient, transparency, to itself. So we're going to take that 0 out, go to our text, effect alpha blending coefficient, and we're going to add that by like 5. Okay. So now what we're going to do is click on new condition again, make a fourth line, and because we're going to want to compare the string's transparency, but it's not actually an option to select on here to compare it, we're going to have to go to our special conditions and click on compare to general values. So that way what we can do is for this top value, we're going to select the string's transparency and check if it's greater or equal to 255 or completely transparent in this case. Make a new action. And normally we would just jump to the office frame, but we haven't actually created that yet. So what we'll do, we'll go back to our storyboard editor for a second and just make a new frame real fast, and this is going to be our office frame. Just make sure the background color here is black because it'd be really weird for it to be white. Now we're gonna go over, I keep going to the normal editor, sorry. Insert action, we're gonna go back to our storyboard controls, go to jump to frame, and then go to office. And that's about it for the night transition for the most part. Of course, there are a few other things that we can do. For example, we can actually make a new active, and we can have kind of that little blip that you see right at the beginning of the frame every time you go to that transition. So that blip that kind of like goes in. Got memes, sorry. You guys can look at my memes folder now if you'd like. FNaF 1 files, textures, blips. I'm literally just dragging in the blip animation. Actually, there's like 3 in FNaF 1, so I'll just do this one, why not? Okay, and if you ever change your hotspot or action point, make sure that you're paying attention to these if you're ever, you know, importing objects, especially if you're importing as animations like we're doing now, because we probably want this to be in the top left, or it could be centered. I don't think it matters too much for just the blip, but just always make sure that you're paying attention to these two things, or especially the hotspot. I mean, I don't ever really use action point, but it's kind of the same thing. So now we have our little blip animation. Now we're going to go to direction options. Usually we want this to be really fast, so I usually set the speed here in the direction options to 99. So we'll press OK. Set its positions to centered. Call this blip. Boom. And then, and I know you're also wondering, Matt, you haven't really done anything with the any ++ object yet. I promise, making sure that we have like a night setup with this is going to be important. So now what we're going to do is make a new condition for our blip object. We're going to select that. go over to animation, and check if it's finished. And since you only have one, which is our first one stopped, we'll select that. And what we're going to do is go over to and make a new action. Click on the blip object that we just made, and we're just gonna kill it. We're just gonna destroy it. Because now, if we take a look, oh, I guess it was too fast that you couldn't even see. Hang on, maybe if I slowed it down, you can kind of see it in action more. There we go. I guess 50 probably is a fine speed. Usually you can catch it. Yeah, like that's fine. And as you can see, it also fades. Frame number 1. Why does it say frame number 1? Probably just because we're running by the frame and not by the application. Okay, whatever. So, in any case, though, it's also just really important, usually, if you have your save data stuff set up right away, so that way when you do have to be tampering with, you know, getting values and setting values, that you don't have to deal with that, you know, in the moment. Usually, if you can get it done and over with as soon as you can, that's usually wise to do. And I mean, that's about it for the night transition. It's much less complex than, say, the menu, for example. Like the amount of code in the menu compared to the amount of code in the night transition, it's kind of nuts. In regard to the menu, I'm assuming we didn't even set up anything with yeah, we never even set up anything with it saying like which night you're on when you hover over continue. I suppose I could maybe do that. So here's something that we can do. Before I close the tutorial off, because there really wasn't much, but I will show you guys proper usage of the night value. Or I suppose, yeah, of the night value. So what we'll do is we're going to make a new condition. Well, let's use the buttons group that we made before in the last video, and not put it down here, kind of where everything else is. What we're going to do is make a new condition in line 9, and we're going to check if our mouse pointer is over one of the buttons. However, what we're going to do is we're going to round that down a bit. Or, yeah, round it down a bit. We're going to make a new condition, go over to our buttons, and we're going to check for a specific instance value. So specifically, we're going to be checking for the instance value for our continue game button, which is going to be our second one. So if we go to values, just make sure that's the right one. Yep. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a new action, go over to our buttons, and we're going to be actually... Did I ever show you guys this before? I don't believe so. But like, just completely changing what a string says. I did not, it doesn't look like. So, a neat thing you can do with strings specifically is, instead of just changing the paragraphs to whatever preset text you have, you can literally just change whatever the string is currently saying to whatever you want. So what we'll do is we'll click on Change Alterable String down here, and we're just going to change this to specify what night that we are on as soon as we hover over the continue button. So we'll have continue, you know. Of course, if you're messing with strings, got to make sure that they're in quotations. Have this little line along with spaces in between. And then we're going to add on top of that, and we're going to change it to, we're going to have our night value on top of that. But wait a minute, something's not quite right here. Notice how it says mixed strings and numbers. Obviously, because our night global value is, well, a value and not a string, then just having it like this is going to make Clickteam freak out and do that. So instead, what we're going to do is we need to convert that value to a string. And the way to do that is if we click on this button here, this is going to allow us to do that. So in between these two parentheses, that came just after the string function. Anytime that there's a function or anything, it's usually going to be highlighted in blue in the text expression editor. And now, where it says enter number here, we can put down our night global value. And now, because our night value is being converted to a string by this function, now it's valid. So we'll press OK. Run it just to make sure that this works. And there you go. Now, of course, whenever our mouse is off of the continue button, we want it to go back to it just saying continue and get rid of that -1 at the end. So now we're going to make a new condition. Or actually, I can't do this, can I? Oh, I can. I forgot if you could just drag and drop into the boxes like that in list editor. So we're essentially going to be checking for the same thing in line 10 now in a new condition, except we're going to right click on our first one, mouse pointer is over the buttons, and negate it. Because now we're going to be checking to see if the mouse pointer is away from that. And now what we're going to do is we're going to drag this down here into our actions. So that way we don't have to go into the, list and make all our selections again. Double click it to edit it. And we're going to just take out all of this and just change the alternable string to continue whenever our mouse pointer is off it. Whoops, did not mean to press that. So now if we run the frame again, we can see that now when our mouse is off of it, it just goes right back to saying continue. And then we should be able to simplify this too by adding in an only one action when event loops condition right underneath all of that. It should work just the same. Yeah. So doesn't matter. I usually, whenever I can, I usually like to have conditions like that where it only runs it once every time, because sometimes if you have too many events running at once, Clickteam kind of starts to poop itself. So yeah, that's the use of our night global value that we set up at the beginning. We will utilize this any++ object a bit more in future videos, but for now, I think that's going to be it. This was definitely a much shorter tutorial, but that's also kind of because next time we're going to actually start The Office, which I'm sure is what you guys have all been waiting for. And I've got quite a few things to show you with The Office that a lot of people really don't know about, and it's just stuff that I think is very useful overall. So, with that being said, thank you guys for watching. Hopefully, part 4 won't take me as long to make. I should hopefully be able to follow this up relatively shortly. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.